We're going to start off this morning with Eric talking about the state of the lean startup. So, Eric, I turn it over to you.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Sarah, without whom none of this would have happened. Wow, this is just so overwhelming to see so many of you here. So how are we doing in Lean Startup since last year, especially? As you can see just by looking around and on Twitter or your favorite business publication, our vanity metrics are very strong. Okay, so we got a lot of people jumping on the Lean Startup bandwagon. So thank you for doing that. Of course, that's made my life very interesting these last few years. I certainly appreciate it. But as we all know, the vanity metrics don't really tell the story. Just because you got a lot of people getting excited about something doesn't actually mean anything. And in fact, for the people who have been wondering, hey, what is Lean Startup really about, and what is it really accomplished, and what is the point of all this information that we give you, I will turn that right around to you. Lean Startup, far more than it is mine or any of the other speakers or experts in the community, is yours. It's a community, a movement of people who want to change how entrepreneurship is done, to change how innovation is done. And what you do with the information you take at a place like this, or from reading a book, or what have you, that is what determines whether this all is worthwhile or not. So I really, first and foremost, want to start and end each day with us thinking about what are the questions and problems and challenges that you see in your real life that you can actually do something about immediately, like this evening when you go home, in a break, when you get online, or when you go home to wherever you came here from. That's really what this is about, because there's no way to quantify that work. It happens out of the limelight, out of the public eye, not under the bright lights, but in Lean Startup meetups around the world, in the many, many Lean-related spin-off organizations like Lean Startup Machine and Lean Startup Circle. They're not people who are, getting famous from doing Lean Startup, although there's a few of us. It's primarily people who are busy doing the work, advancing the state of the art in entrepreneurship. So I want to start with a joke that I told last year that has kind of stuck with me this whole time, because we've talked a lot about how people go into entrepreneurship because they hate big companies. Are you familiar with that? A lot of people, they're like, oh, I want the freedom of working for myself and creating a new company. I don't want to be encumbered by the bureaucracy and the dead weight of a big company. I always ask this question. If you hate big companies so much, why are you trying to create a new one? Right, see, very few startups are intentionally small. We think of startups as small companies. That's a common misconception. But those of us who've been through this a few times know that they are only small when they fail to live up to their potential. And so I think one of the questions we really have started to grapple with, especially this past year, is not just how do we get a company started, not just how do you start, but rather what kind of company do we want to create? What is our aspiration for creating a company? Do we want to just create yet another one of those old-fashioned dinosaur-type companies, or do we hope for something different? And one of the things that's been amazing about this year is I've had the chance to spend time with a lot of CEOs of a lot of very differently sized companies. I mean, from 3 to 300,000. Really every possible scale. And you're going to hear about a lot of those companies over the next couple days, including some of the ones I've had a chance to work with, like GE and Toyota and Intuit, but also lots and lots of companies that you've never heard of, who I think are actually just as important. Because we want to bring you stories of actual practitioners who are trying to create this new kind of company together. I call it a growth company. A company that exists not just to extract the value from the great decisions it made a few years ago, but rather a company that seeks new sources of sustainable growth through continuous innovation. And what's interesting is when I meet the CEOs of some of the world's largest companies, and I meet some of the CEOs of the world's unintentionally smallest companies, you know who I'm talking about, I see something that we all really do have in common. It's not that we have the same size company, or we've made the same amount of money, or we dress the same, or we live in the same place. Not even necessarily that we have the same mission for our organization. This now Lean Startup is well off in flourishing in nonprofit, in public sector, in corporate settings, in Silicon Valley, and a lot of other startup hubs. Rather, what we have in common is a shared vision for the kind of company we want to create, a company in which we don't just extract value, but rather try to create new sources of value all the time. So not just create product market fit that one time we got lucky and wow, wasn't that great, but rather always be asking ourselves, how do we seek out new sources of new products, new customers, new sources of fit, new sources of growth, a growth company. And that, to me, is what modern management is really about. It's not just entrepreneurs in a garage. It's not just corporate dudes in a boardroom. Rather, it is a new operating system to try and bring together the best of general management and the best of entrepreneurial management into a new general theory of management. Now, people who aren't used to being in these kind of settings or haven't heard me talk before are going to be like, why are we talking about management? I thought we were going to be talking about something cool. I know, I promise, we will talk about some cool things before this conference is over, but we have to start with management, because fundamentally, a startup is not a product. It is not an idea. It is not a cool business plan. It is a human institution designed to create something new under conditions of extreme uncertainty. And that means that entrepreneurship is the management discipline that deals specifically with situations of high uncertainty. And that is what we are all facing more and more. I don't ever go anywhere and people say to me, gosh, Eric, thanks for coming. The problem we're having is that everything in our world has gotten more stable. Everything's slowing down and everything's getting simpler. We face fewer competitors than ever before. The pace of technological change has slowed and we kind of have it under control. And we have a really clear view of what's going to happen in the future. I don't think I've heard any of those statements anywhere I've gone. In fact, the opposite of each. But our traditional management tools are not quite up to the challenge of dealing with that uncertainty, because fundamentally, the 20th century general management paradigm was about planning and forecasting, about figuring out what's the plan, and then who's ahead of plan, who's on time, who's on budget. And as we've been saying for a number of years in Lean Startup, if you're building something that nobody wants, why are you so ungodly proud that you did it on time and on budget? Right? You're driving the proverbial car off the cliff, but you're bragging about the gas mileage. Okay, that's what we're trying to avoid with Lean Startup. So what does this new entrepreneurial management look like? I think we're starting to see its contours. And I just want to paint a little bit of a picture of what that company of the future is going to look like. What does it look like to be in a modern company? Because what's so interesting to me is, let's be honest, Lean Startup as a community, we are pretty good at bumper stickers. Anyone notice this? One of our primary exports is buzzwords, for which we are, I suppose, infamous more than famous. I've had to apologize many times for my role in popularizing the word pivot. I am sorry about that. But we're good at that. Minimum viable product, get out of the building. I've heard that you can buy T-shirts that say get out of the building on them. So we're good at the bumper sticker. And look, people read the book, they read my book or any of the others that have come out in the past few years, and they get excited about the concepts that can be squeezed onto a bumper sticker. But those actually, by volume, are not the most important concepts that we talk about. If you go to a Lean Startup meetup, sure, there will be people spouting the bumper stickers, but the people who've been around for a little while, who've had a chance to try to put these ideas into practice, are much more interested in the frankly way more boring topics. Like, how do we manage teams? How do we hold people accountable? And what is the accounting paradigm that we should use? Of course, I advocate something called innovation accounting, which you're going to hear about soon. I know some people are like, oh, goody, accounting, that's going to be really exciting. I know, bear with me. What's exciting is to see companies, products, new organizations succeed. And accounting is simply a means to that end. But if we don't change the accounting paradigm, we can't be successful in making that change. So beyond the bumper stickers, what is this really about? What does that future modern company look like? And I think, to me, the thing I look for is if an individual employee in your company, I don't care at what level, from the most junior to the most senior, someone on the board, an investor, anybody in that company has an idea for something that could work. How does it get implemented? Now, today, most of the places I go, I meet people working really hard every day. I mean, like you wouldn't believe. I was got to visit a really cool manufacturing facility, an honest-to-God factory. And it looks just like you imagine a factory would look like. And it's in the midst of a traditional lean implementation. For those that don't know, lean and Lean Startup comes from lean manufacturing. We're going to be talking about that quite a bit over the next few days. And so they're trying to make everything in the factory more efficient. And so they, like any good lean manufacturing company, they're a learning organization. Just like Toyota, if an individual line factory worker has an idea for how to improve the work that they do every day, there's a process, a really difficult and complicated process, but a process that every person in the factory knows, here's how I get my idea tested to see if it is in fact an efficiency gain. But those aren't the only kinds of ideas that matter in a modern company. So I was talking to some folks who make appliances, and we were looking at the user interface on a modern appliance. Now, if you go in your kitchen, your appliances that you use, one of my appliances has 29 buttons on it, on the face. I counted. And I asked myself, how many of those buttons have I ever pushed in my life? And the answer was 3. So 26 of the 29 buttons I have never pushed, and I think we can guess, in fact, we know, that probably nobody has ever pushed those buttons, ever. How many of you ever pushed on your, say, microwave or refrigerator? There's all these extra buttons. Now, if you've never been in a factory, you don't realize the raw amount of skill and craftsmanship that goes into wiring up every single button on every single panel thousands of times a day. Think of the millions of man-hours that are invested in creating and wiring up buttons that are never pressed by a human being ever. Now, that's not as sexy as the $100 million startup that flames out, building a product that nobody wants. Some of us have done that together. But it's still a colossal waste of human effort. Now, whose fault is it? Whose fault is it? Who's supposed to fix that problem? Is it the guy actually wiring up the buttons with high quality every day on the assembly line? No, it's not his fault. Is it the fault of the factory manager, the plant manager? No. It's not the CEO of the company's fault. He's not supposed to worry about buttons on an interface. Obviously, the product manager's fault. We have any product managers in the house? Always the product manager's fault, right, exactly. Except the product manager did exactly what they were told. They went to who they thought their customer was. Of course, not the end user. What do they have to do with it? Right, the category buyer at the retailer that carries these appliances, and asked them, hey, what should we do with this interface? And they were told more buttons is better. Like consumers are always coming up to you and saying, God, I really wish this interface was more complicated, had more options on it. But that's what he believed. So we got that feedback from the customer, and they told us to make it more complicated, so we did. But have we really run an experiment? Have we really run an experiment to discover if that actually makes a difference to the end user? Have we actually figured out if those buttons drive commercial advantage? We know the answer far too often is no, we haven't. So it's nobody's fault. It's not the marketing guy's fault. It's not the engineer's fault. It's not the designer's fault. It's nobody's fault, and yet the end result as a system is unacceptable. It is a waste of human time and potential. And I want us all, as we go through the next couple days, to really feel viscerally the pain of all of those people doing outstanding work that adds no value. And then ask ourselves, in our company, do we know anybody who's wiring up buttons that are never pushed? Not in your company, obviously. But do you have a friend? And are you sure that the work that you do actually creates value for customers? That, to me, is a modern company. That if you have an idea that says, I'm not sure that this product is even worth building. I don't think this interface actually needs to be so complicated. Do we have a routine and regular process for immediately testing, experimenting to discover the honest-to-God truth about whether that is true or not? Does that make sense? That's what I want us to really think about. How do we apply that in our companies together? Now, this is also 2013, a very special anniversary for me, because my lean startup journey is almost exactly 5 years old right now. It was almost exactly 5 years ago that I first posted on my blog, Startup Lessons Learned, that I had this idea for a way to talk about this modern trend of how, at that time, I was talking really about Silicon Valley startups called lean startup, coining that phrase. And I really didn't think this is where it was going to take me at all. So this has been an incredible 5 years. And not just 5 years of me doing work, I'm certainly very proud of the work that I've done, but 5 years of so many of you taking ownership of these ideas and taking them to new places. So as I was thinking about this conference and what we wanted it to be about, to me the most important thing is not how much has stayed the same in Lean Startup, all the smart things we knew 5 years ago that we know today, but rather all the new things that we didn't know, all the things that we've learned even since the books, pick your favorite book, has come out. Because if we're not learning new things, if we're not changing what we believe, then fundamentally we are wasting our time. And that's unacceptable for the guy in the factory line. That's unacceptable for us too. So I also want you to think about what are the new things that challenge the orthodoxy that we have come to believe that you see on stage over the next couple of days. We have made an effort to bring you ideas that disagree with each other, experts and practitioners alike who are trying things maybe that didn't work and that didn't work as well as the book says that they would. So we can actually talk about what's real in entrepreneurship. That's what I hope you'll get out of the next few days. And so I want to leave you with one last comment. This is something that I mentioned very briefly in the book. The book is 2 years old now, if you can believe it. And it didn't get a lot of attention then, but it's become an increasingly important part of my work. And it's a diagram that I call the startup way. It's based on a diagram from a book called The Toyota Way. We're going to meet some folks from Toyota later today. And it's basically just a reminder that the process parts of Lean, the bumper sticker, Kaizen, Kanban, MVP, you pick your favorite buzzword in English or Japanese, the process bits that we get so excited about, and that's what people pretty much remember and think about, are not themselves the enabler of the change that we seek. Rather, they rest on a foundation of Toyota's philosophy of long-term thinking. And that's the paradox of Lean Startup. that we combine the short-term action of rapid experimentation and MVPs with the long-term vision to put a dent in the universe. And so the startup way is an analogous pyramid, and it simply goes like this: accountability, process, culture, people, in that order. As people try to implement Lean Startup, if they only focus on one of those 4 levels, they will certainly fail. We certainly have plenty of examples and plenty of people in here who have tried it. That fundamentally, we have to change how we hold people accountable, the accounting paradigm. How do we decide which metrics to use to promote people, to reward them? Of course, we have to make process change, but that process change is designed to create, foster, and incubate a new and more dynamic culture. And lastly, of course, the foundational principle of all Lean is respect for people. Let's not forget that our goal here is not products and money and the artifacts of our work, but rather to support and make good use of the time, energy, creativity, passion, and intellect of our people. So, does that make sense? Thank you all so much for being here. Let us get this conference underway. Thank you.